Friends, Tulio Pena here, and what I'm going to talk about today has absolutely nothing to do with real estate. This is something I'm passionate about, and it's something that I think a lot of people that live here in Colorado Springs may not know much about, but you've probably seen a part of it out and about. What I want to talk about is my favorite meal, green chili. And this is one form of green chili. When you drive around the Springs on busy corners, you might see a guy with a big roaster. It's like a cylinder thing that's somewhat hollow, full of green chilies, and they're roasting them with a gas powered type of machine. Anyway, I didn't know much about these when I first moved here from Florida, because in Florida it's a whole different kind of Hispanic food. When I moved here, a good friend of mine, Steve Aragon, who also is a realtor now in Florida, introduced me to green chili, and I fell in love with it. It's an amazing meal, and it's not always spicy. A lot of people go, oh, I can't eat spicy. Peppers come in all different levels of heat. So don't be afraid of trying green chili. But what I love about it is it's literally something you can eat for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and it's extremely healthy if you want it to be, okay? So, and there's a lot of different ways to prepare it. I've seen people prepare green chili simply as a relish. I've seen it as just a topping, and I've seen it as a full-blown soup or stew. I prepare my green chili as a stew. It's the way my family likes it. And when I make green chili, I go big. I have very large stock pots. I make a lot of it, and then we put it into like Tupperware or glass containers, and we store it in a deep freeze, and it lasts us months. One of my family's favorite meals. So I'm going to walk you through my process of making green chili.
Roasted. Smells good.
Okay.
Hey guys, so we're on to step number 2 of the green chili making process. So what I do is I've got these giant bags of green chilies that you saw me buying earlier, and you can do it in different ways, but I leave the char on my green chilies. Some people will clean them off. You gotta kind of run it under water to get the char off. It's a little bit of effort, but then the next step is, once your food processor is full with about 15 or even maybe 20, depending on the size of them, you just grind them up into a mash. Should be good enough. Take a look at it real quick. This is what it will look like. I call that a mash of green chili. And then I just store all that either in a large Tupperware or plastic Ziploc bags until I'm ready to use it. And you'll see what we do next to make the stew. All right? Okay, so once I've processed all the green chilies into a mash, I bag them. And I bag them into freezer gallon Ziplocs. It looks like this. That's a lot of green chili right there. That could make probably about 5 to 6 large stock pots worth of green chili. So next step will be to actually start making it.
Okay, we're on to the next step. We are browning the ground beef. Now, this is Tulio Pena, and he's helping me out today. He's really good at cooking green chili. You can use different meats. A lot of people will use pork in green chili. We have a ton of ground beef that our aunt and uncle from Iowa brought out, and they raised the cow themselves and brought us half a cow this year. So we are browning this ground beef, and this is going to be a big part of it. And then the next part will be browning some onions. Okay, so we finished browning the meat, and here's my daughter, Tulio Pena. And one thing you want to make sure you do is drain any fat that there was in the meat. The meat we had was actually really lean. If you use some ground turkey, it's also really lean, but do drain the fat. Don't put it down your sink. Bag the fat, throw it away. And then the next step we're going to move on to is the onions. These are onions. Now, you don't have to have special onions like we do, but these are onions that we grew ourselves in our garden over at Old Farm. Grandpa Gary is my wife's father, and he helped grow all these onions, which I chopped up a few days ago. So we're doing quite a bit. of onions because they do cook down. I'd probably say almost nearly 2 pounds of onions. And then here's Caleb, and he's got some supplemental onions. You can buy chopped onions at the grocery store, and that really speeds up the process for you as well. I always keep several bags of chopped onions on hand because I like to cook a lot and we use onions all the time. So we're gonna add a little bit of those. They come frozen, but they thaw real quick. So that's the step we're on to now. We're gonna brown these. It'll probably take about 5 to 10 minutes since we're using some frozen, and that's the next step.
Should I put these in there?
Sure, go ahead, buddy. All right, now Caleb is prepping for the future here, but we put beans in our green chili stew. Some people don't. Caleb is my can opener using the can opener. We've got about 18 cans of northern beans, cannellini beans, those are the white beans. We've got kidney beans, and I also use a lot of garbanzo beans. Some people will use pizzoli or other things which you may consider a filler in your green chili. We like beans. I think they're a little bit healthier. They provide a lot of fiber as well and vitamins. Okay, so the next step, I've transferred the browned onions into stock pots. These are pretty big stock pots. They're about 5-gallon stock pots. And so the onions are all in here. Come on over a little closer with the camera. Show what's inside the stock pot. My daughter Avery, who's 13, is my camera person. I've got all the ground beef that I've drained in this giant tub right here. And I'm gonna go ahead and start adding the ground beef. I just do 1 scoop at a time, try to keep it even with each one. Like I said, I'm going big. Most people aren't going to be as crazy as I am and go with this amount, but try to keep it equal in each pot. And then the next step that we're going to do is we're going to add stock to the stock pots. And the stock, you can buy chicken stock or turkey stock at a grocery store in little cartons that have about a couple of quarts in them or so. I make my own stock. This is one of my Tupperwares full of stock that we made from Uncle Eldon's turkey a few months back. I take the carcass, the bones of a turkey that was roasted, and then just cook those bones down for about 3 hours with a lot of water in there and make my own stock. So, but you can do it either way. You're going to want to buy several quarts of stock. The thing that's beautiful about soup and stews is you can always dial it in. I know I kind of wing this recipe a lot, but I have it written out, which I'm happy to share with you. So if you want a written out version of it, I'll provide that to you. But yeah, I just kind of go based on how much meat we've got, how much beans we've got, and all that. So anyway, the stock will be going in here shortly. Okay, so Caleb, my trusty partner, is draining the beans. You want to make sure you get all that water out of the beans. You don't want to add that to your soup. Okay, so then the next step, Caleb, you can take a break from that. We're going to transfer camera people back to me. So the next step over here is we're going to season the meat and the onions. I've combined the meat and the onions. Cumin is a very important part of this recipe. It's very pretty pungent, strong. I'm going to do a little bit more than a tablespoon. I'm going to do a tablespoon and a half to both pots because these are big pots. So there's another one and about another half. Okay, so we got cumin in each one. We're going to do some black pepper. Now I'm not going to go too crazy on the black pepper because we're going to be using green chilies, which are peppers of their own. I'm doing about a half a tablespoon of that. Then I'm going to go with some salt. I'm doing some pretty coarse granular salt. You can use kosher salt too. It breaks down slower over time. I'm just going to do 1 tablespoon right now. You can dial in your salt a little bit later. And then I'm going to do a tablespoon of garlic in each one of my pots. Those are the primary seasonings that I use in my green chili. We're going to stir all this up. And we'll come back for the next step here in a moment. Okay, the next step is a real easy step. I'm taking my chicken stock and adding it to the stock pots. I actually still have a little ice in my chicken stock because these were frozen. As I told you before, we just took some cooked chicken or turkey and put it in a big stock pot full of water and cooked all the flavor out of it. So pretty easy step. Okay, the next step is going to be adding the green chili. I food processed this green chili in this big gallon bag the other day. I like to keep the char on my green chili, as I told you earlier. I'm just going to be doing a scoop. That's one. I'm going to keep going back and forth between my two stock pots so we are about equal. And I'm going to let that cook for, I'd say about a half hour before we move on to the next step. So the next step, I'm going to add the beans to the stock pots. As you can see, this stock pot got a little bit more fluid to it, the stock, than this one did. And my wife noticed, Dina, who's filming right now, that I need to add some more stock. And a lot will evaporate as you go. So it's helpful to have extra stock on hand. You can always dial in your flavor later on with seasonings as far as saltiness and stuff like that goes.
Okay, so we're pretty much done making the green chili. I've made, as I told you before, 2 large stock pots worth of it. So I'm gonna show it to you. Yeah, that's what it looks like when it's all done. Stir it up a little bit. You can see all the beans, you can see the green chilies, the onions in there. And what I do is I let this cook for about 2.5 to 3 hours on a simmer. And then I just dial it in with a little bit of salt, garlic powder, whatever I think I need to finish it off. So that's how Tulio Pena makes his green chili. And I do have the recipe all typed out. So if you like that, just send me an email or a text and I'll email it to you. All right, thanks a lot, guys. Take care.